welcome everybody. I'm going to do a mortgage amortization table, just so you have a copy of it for when you're trying to do it in your assignment. So let's first take a rundown of the information that we have. There will be some calculations I have to do along the way, just the same as you will. Some of them will use the TVM calculator, the advanced mode, and some of them you'll just have to do kind of on your own, either in the calculator or in the spreadsheet in a similar way that I'm doing it. There are different ways you can do this in the spreadsheet, but I'm going to try and make this kind of as easy to follow as possible. So let's look at our situation. We are dealing with a property value here that is worth $800,000, and we are putting down a down payment of 10%. So right now the mortgage amount is blank. So that's one of the things I need to calculate. So if you bring up a calculator, you need to be paying, you can do two things. You can do 90% of 800,000, because if you're doing a 10% down payment, that means you're mortgaging the rest, which is 90%. That's probably the fastest way to do it. The other way to do it is to calculate what 10% of 800,000 is and then subtract that from 800,000. So I'm going to do it the shorter way, but any other way works. So 90% is, as a decimal, is 0.9. So if I take 0.9 times 800,000, then you will see that you get that value, 720,000. So I will just go ahead and put that in here. I could have also calculated that in the spreadsheet, but I'll just change this to Canadian dollars. You can do it either way. Okay, so the interest rate is 4.55%. That's compounded semi-annually. And remember, that is by law in Canada that any fixed rate mortgage has to be compounded semi-annually. So that is always going to be the same. This is going to be a 25-year mortgage, and we're going to be paying every week. So I am going to take quite a bit, advantage of the fill down command in a spreadsheet. So I'm going to do one of the longer examples, because when you pay every week, that's more payments. Periodic rate, that is still needs to be calculated, but we'll do that in step 2. The first thing we're going to do is find out what is the payment amount that we need to make, and we'll use the TVM calculator for that. So we're going to jump over to here, and we were mortgaging $720,000, so that is our present value. The future value is going to be 0 because we want to pay that off. Payments will leave blank until the end. And now we fill in the other information. So 4.55%, and we always leave this one annually for the mortgage situation. The periods is, now we have to make a calculation. So it was 25 years and every week. So, and there's 52 weeks in a year. So if I bring up 52 times 25, I will get 1,300. So let's just put that in there. And we need to make sure that we change this drop down to weekly for it to work correctly. So we're almost done. We just need to change the compounding to semi-annually, because again, that is by law. So the only thing left blank here is payments. So I can go ahead and click that, and we get a payment of $922.91 every week. So I'm going to start to come back to my spreadsheet here, and I'm going to start with maybe payment 0, and there's no interest, payment, principal in that one, and we just want to load in our value here. So I'm going to change this to Canadian dollars. You don't have to do that, but it's easier for me to read, so I do that. So the payment, I'm just going to write this down, $922.91. This is not going to change through the duration of the mortgage. It's always going to be the same. I don't want to type 922 every single time, so I'm going to use the fill down command in a minute, but I'm just going to write that in here, so that is where it's going to stay. So I'm almost ready, because I'm about to do payment 1 here. So after the first week has passed, I'd be ready to make a payment, but interest will have accrued, or interest will have been charged within that time. So I need to figure out the periodic rate here in order to know how much interest in dollars there is. So I'm just going to take a second here. on the screen, you'll see the formula displayed. We do need to have a kind of complicated formula since a mortgage is a general annuity. But you just have to calculate this interest rate once, and it will be the same for the rest of this problem. Okay, so I'll make this calculation in the spreadsheet here. So I'm going to say equals. It's 1 plus the interest rate, which was 4.55%. So I need to enter that in as the decimal. So 0.0455. And I'm going to divide it by 2. That was part of the formula. Close the bracket. Now we get to the exponent. So the exponent in a spreadsheet is the hat button, which you could find as Shift 6. And there's a fraction in the exponent, so I'm going to open up another bracket. The formula has a 2 in the top, and then in the bottom we divide by m, which is how many times we're paying per year. It's weekly, so that is the 52. Now we close that because that's the end of the exponent, and then the last part of the formula is -1, and we get this very, very small value here. Usually when we do these weekly ones, we typically find that there's 3 zeros at the beginning of the decimal. So if you're doing this in your calculator, you're probably going to see it show up with a times 10 to the -4, because it's probably going to do scientific notation at that point. If you're in the spreadsheet, you can just follow along with what I'm doing and just leave it here like that. Okay, so this is the periodic interest rate, and that is going to be the percentage that tells me how much interest is being charged to me after the first week. So I'm going to press equals, and just like what you would have done in class, it's the balance, and then we're doing times. So the star is times in the spreadsheet, and we just click on the periodic rate. Okay, and I'm actually going to do something a little bit different. I'm not going to click on the B7. I am going to, just to avoid, let's just take 0.0008656. We'll just take like 4 digits, just like what we were doing in class, because I just don't, when I fill down, it's a little bit harder if I have to always reference this value. So we'll just kind of make it a little bit easier. So I'm going to click on the balance because I do want that one to move as I fill down. And I'm just going to put times 0.0008656. So I'm cutting off, or I'm rounding some of those numbers, but that's okay. We're not going to worry too much about that here. But we should get a value here for interest. And so if we're trying to pay with this $922, we have to pay this interest first. I might as well change this to Canadian dollars. And so after we pay that interest, there's going to be about $300 left over. So that is the value here that we should get. So I'm going to subtract these two. So I'm going to say equals the payment minus the interest, and just press enter. So it is really close to $300. That is what I actually get to apply to my balance now. So I pay down my balance. Most of my payment was interest, unfortunately. It's about 2/3. But that's one of the indications that you are doing your calculation correctly. On your first couple of payments, or first bunch, you should find there's more interest than principal. Those will kind of switch as you pay more and more money down. As your balance decreases, your principal will start to increase and your interest will go down. But for your first couple of rows, you should see more than half of the payment be interest. So that's something to look for. Now the new balance is going to be the old balance. So I just click on that one. So equals, click there, minus what my current principal is. So there's $719,000, $700.32. So everything here is now ready to be filled down. If you were doing this by hand, you would do 2 and you would calculate the new interest. I'll do it this time here. So equals the previous balance times the same I, so 0.0008656. See, interest is going down. My payment is the same. So I'm going to just put it in again as 922.91, but I will make the formatting match. And then the principal again is what's left over after you've paid that interest. So it's going to be equal to the payment minus the interest. The principal goes up a tiny bit, and the balance is now subtracted again. It's the older balance minus what we are paying off this time in the principal. So I just did the same calculation again. I didn't need to do that row. What I'm allowed to do now is kind of fill everything down. So I'm going to do this in 2 steps here because I'm going to get my numbers first. So I want the spreadsheet here to actually recognize the pattern. So I'm going to highlight. So I'm clicking and holding, dragging down so I see all 3 of these numbers show up in blue. And then I'm looking for this fill down box here, and I'm going to click it, and then I'm going to drag down. So as I do that, you'll know you did this correctly if the first 3 stay blue and I get this dotted line as I'm dragging down. So if I let go, it's going to complete the pattern for me. So I'm going to do this for quite a while because I need 1,300 payments here. So I'm just going to continue on this here. I'm going to grab this little dot again, and I'm going to drag way down until I start seeing 1,300. So I actually need to add more rows to this spreadsheet. We'll just add another 400 rows. Still want to continue this down. So again, that is why I'm doing one of the longer examples, just so you can see that it's, takes a minute, but it's not actually that bad. Doing it by hand might even be more tedious. Okay, so there's our 1,300. That's our 1,300 payment. The balance should be around 0 at this point. So now I'm just going to scroll back up to the top. And I'm going to do it for the other rows as well. So the payment, my formula is just referencing the previous balance. That's good. And I'm timesing by the interest rate. My payment value is going to be the same. Did I say payment earlier? I meant interest is just times by the previous balance. The payment is always the same. The principal is what's directly to the left minus the one over there. And my new balance is the old balance minus the principal. So those are all referencing cells very close to each other. So that is ready to fill down. So same thing. My whole row here is blue, but then I grab the square and I click and hold on the square, and you'll know you're doing it right if you see the rest of the next part of the selection show up kind of in a dotted line. So I'm just gonna drag all the way down to match my 1,300. It's a little easier to do now that the numbers are there. So we've got a full amortization table here. We end up with a balance of $31. Normally we get really close to 0. And this is pretty close, but over 25 years, the rounding, since we have to round the payment to 91 cents and we can't go further than that, there just ends up being a little bit of rounding error. But this $31 is not something to worry about in the context of a 25-year loan. So there is the full amortization for a mortgage. So you can use this as a kind of template to work from in your assignment. Okay? See you later.